7 rounds down and 2 remain to resolve the most competitive national touring car title in living memory. Nissan's Mark Scaife has led the points battle since the tour opened at Wanneroo Park. But make no mistake, Ford Sierra standout John Bowe and BMW king Tony Longhurst have thrown everything his way in recent outings. Today, 7 Sport bids you welcome from Perth's Wanneroo Park Raceway and the penultimate round of the Shell Australian Touring Car Championship. Nissan may be bound for the crown, but in this sport, the dreams of teams can be easily shattered. Round 8 of the championship should be quite a race, and it's proudly brought to you by Shell. Go well, go Shell, and by Synovus Vitamins. Hello Australia, I'm Mike Raymond. Welcome to beautiful Wanneroo Park Raceway in Western Australia. Today, the penultimate round of the Shell Australian Touring Car Championship. Well, Wanneroo has been a fairly happy haven for the past few years for Ford Sierras, and not a lot has changed this weekend. I'm sure Alan Moffat will agree that the Ford Sierras look very much the car to beat here, and John Bowe in particular.
Yes, well, he's had 5 pole positions so far in the series, Mike. I think not to be discounted, look out for those GTRs. They're out of the top 6 at the moment, but they'll come through in that second heat.
Well, of course, in points today, let's take a look at the championship points table lead. 190 points shows Mark Scaife as the leader. From 160, his teammate Jimmy Richards. Then on 141, no baloney Tony Longhurst in the BMW. And right behind him, Glenn Seaton in the Peter Jackson Sierra. Well, do you think in the second race this afternoon we might see the BMWs come into their own, or has Freddie Gibson and the GTR's got something up their sleeve?
Well, the GTR obviously doesn't have the advantage here that it had at Malala last weekend. But don't discount that little BMW in the second heat. If they run a low gas load and can get up the hill as fast as they need to, they'll be dynamite around the rest of the circuit.
We've got the makings of 2 fabulous races here for round 8 of the Shell Australian Series. The cars are coming onto the circuit now. Here's how they line up. And as you can see, John Bowe, the Shell Sierra, starts off pole position with Wayne Park. The Peter Jackson Sierra alongside Dickie Johnson in the Shell Sierra starts out at position 3. Tony Longhurst, the Benson & Hedges BMW from 4, and from 5.30, Glenn Seaton. For position number 6, it's 11, Larry Perkins in the Castrol Commodore. From 7.8, Colin Bond, the Caltech CXT Sierra. From 8, number 1, Jimmy Richards, the Winfield Nissan, long way back. And so's his team partner from 9.2, and that's the series leader, Mark Scaife. From 10.20, Alan Jones, the Benson & Hedges BMW. For position 11, in number 4, Mark Gibbs and the GIO Nissan GTR. From 12.23, Paul Morris, the third at the B&H BMWs. From 13.77, from Western Australia, Alf Barbagallo. 14.66, another West Australian, Ian Love in the Coca-Cola Commodore. 31 from position number 15 is Phil Johnson, and rounding out a 16-car field is Bob Jones from Victoria in another Commodore. Beautiful day here at Wanneroo Park Raceway in Western Australia. A very, very big crowd on hand for the penultimate round of the Shell Australian Touring Car Championship. Not too far away from the start. Car number 35, there's Tony Longhurst in the number 25 Benson & Hedges machine. He shares row number 2 with Dickie Johnson in 17. 10 seconds away from the start. Can Mark Scaife do it today, or we have to wait to grand final day at Oran Park? That's a long 10 seconds. Everyone's getting edgy. Go. Bowe pulls the right gear, gets off the line. There goes Jimmy Richards down the outside as Wayne Park lights up the tyres, and Alan Jones gets a shocker of a start out on the grass as they head into the first turn, the right-hander. And as they head out of there, you'll find it's the 2 Shell Sierras with John Bowe, the race leader, Dickie Johnson up into second spot, and I think Glenn Seaton back in the pack just a little bit, and Wayne Park looking to pick up third spot. But right behind him is Jimmy Richards, and I would think that Alan Moffat would agree Richards got a pretty good start there.
Yes, he did, Mike. The only fellow that got a bingle off the start was Alan Jones, and the GTR of Mike Gibbs. We can't quite see what happened there on the start line, but I suspect it was the Commodores slingshotting themselves off rather quickly with the green light.
25 laps the first heat as John Bowe, the pace setter here at Wanneroo Park, brings them down the hill to the right-hander as we welcome Mark Osler. And Bowe is in the perfect spot, Mark.
Once again, and a continuation of the Shell cars' domination, certainly of qualifying, and they're looking for a good result here at Wanneroo. The cars have been showing a lot of consistency in race 4. John Bowe leading his team leader, Dick Johnson, and the Peter Jackson car. But look at Jim Richards up in 4th place. These guys had a terrible qualifying effort, 8th and 9th fastest. They struggled through qualifying like they did last year, and now they've got a lot more work on their hands with the cars being less powerful and heavier.
Well, of course, Malala Raceway, round 7 of the championship last weekend, a little more user-friendly to Nissans as Malala. It's very narrow, it's fairly bumpy, and the four-wheel drive advantages of the Nissan GTR really do come into force there. Wanneroo's a different kettle of fish, as we've seen in qualifying. Here's Richards sitting right in behind Tony Longhurst, and Longhurst giving Glenn Seaton merry hell as they come out of the sweep and work their way up towards the top of the hill. And there's Grunt coming into it for you as Jimmy Richards comes down the inside. He's making the big moves, and Larry Perkins and the Castrol Commodore sits one back behind there.
Brakes are very important here at the end of that main straight, Mike. It's a 90-degree corner. It's been widened a little bit over the years, but nevertheless, the cars have got to pull up at the end of that straight. They're doing well over 150 down that back straight. They get a real slingshot, and certainly you'll be watching for puffs of smoke as they lock up brakes in that corner.
Okay, Bow stretches his lead. It's out to about 4 car lengths over Dick Johnson, then 3 back to Wayne Park, doing a good job in the second of the Peter Jackson Ford Sierras, and Jimmy Richards is right behind him. There's Longhurst going through in the 25 car. They head downhill, and there's the gap back, Longhurst to Jimmy Richards, and Richards sitting in, as I said, right behind the blue Peter Jackson car as they exit that turn.
Longhurst will have a good run through that corner. It's quite flowing, that dip. You go downhill and a right-handed horseshoe on the approach up onto the main straight, and he'll be happy to float through that corner. The heavier cars have got to be a little bit tentative about their tires, but Longhurst is giving it a good thrash already early in this first heat.
We're taking pictures on our Nissan race cam as we ride with Jimmy Richards into the right-hander. He's starting to close it up here as they make the exit out of that turn. Getting a little closer all the time to Wayne Park.
Now closing up the gap behind Richards is Mark Scaife. He's got Glenn Seaton between himself and his team leader. And the situation here is pretty critical for Scaife. He's got to finish in front of his teammate to win the championship in Wanneroo this weekend. So it'll be interesting to see how team tactics come into it when Scaife eventually climbs onto the back of Richards.
Downhill to the right-hander again. Someone once described Wanneroo Park as a strip of bitumen around a huge sand trap. That's actually what it looks a little like. Well out of Perth, but motorsport fans have turned out in their thousands here today. Johnny Bow, race leader in the number 18 car, having a stellar season for Dick Johnson Racing. And there's the gap back to Johnson. You can see that then to Wayne Park. So that's actually opened up to probably about 10 car lengths over Johnson, and then 4 or 5 back to Wayne Park. Then Richards, followed by Glenn Seaton, Mark Scaife. Next is Tony Longhurst, Larry Perkins. The Bob Forbes entry, with Mark Gibbs at the wheel and Colin Bonders next in the Caltech CXT Sierra.
Well, they've been having a good run with their Dunlop tires this year. John Bow and Dick Johnson have been testing extensively, and they say in this business, the harder you work, the luckier you get. But certainly Dunlop have come up with a construction this year which is complementing the engineering in the shell chassis. And here again today we're seeing John Bow looking a lot like he did at Eastern Creek, Mark.
He certainly is. This is the scrap that we're following at the moment, and Richards working away at Wayne Park. Park is running in third. There's a little waggly getting out of there, but they go over the hill. And here's Glenn Seaton arriving. He wants a part of the action. Let's check out how good the brakes are here as he comes up on the inside. Does a good job there on Jimmy Richards. Richards comes back at him and has the lie for the next turn. That's on the inside. And I think Glenn, as they hit the 7,500 RPM pop-off, you could hear that explosion there. Now he's forced to tuck in behind. Next time he comes down the hill, he should be on the inside.
It was very interesting that the GTR can take any line it wants and come out of a corner. With the speed at which Glenn arrived at that corner, he had to float through, use the apex and use the exit, the full amount of real estate that was available to him. But Jim just simply tucked her in a little bit tighter and roared up on the inside along pit straight.
It is one of the curiosities, Alan, of this the dynamics of the chassis of this GTR. It's an inherent understeer, and certainly on these fast sweeping corners and with the less power they've got this year, the car's understeer is even more exaggerated. So they've really struggled through qualifying, and as you can see, the Sierra is more than a match for them here in race trim.
Well, I don't know about a match, but certainly keeping them honest. I think we have to be serious about the four-wheel drive advantage at all times. But certainly the Peter Jackson cars here are giving them a good run for their money.
Great shots there from our race cam. Sits atop the Glenn Seaton Peter Jackson car as they exit turn number 2. And there's Jimmy Richards really working hard on Wayne Park. To his credit, though, Park has been able to just hang on, drive carefully, probably checking the mirrors out as well.
We've got quite a freight train going here. Park, Richards, Seaton, Mark Scaife moves up to the back of the second Peter Jackson car, and there's Tony Longhurst in the first of the B&H BMW, so this should be quite a show.
This is a great battle. We're staying with that because Johnny Bow is opening that gap all the time over Dickie Johnson. The Shell team, we'll go back to them a little later. They're having a fantastic run. Well and truly clear of Wayne Park, Jimmy Richards, Glenn Seaton, followed by Mark Scaife, and Tony Longhurst with Larry Perkins and Alan Jones, then followed by Colin Bond, Mark Gibbs, and then Paul Morris. That's the order as they rip one more off across the line, down to the right-hander, turn number 1.
Well, the GTR will be feeling their weight here today, and yes, feeling a bit more of their way around. Nice move there by Jim Richards on Wayne Park.
Well, he's up to third now, Jimmy Richards, and I would think Seaton will be very keen if he can get a good shot here at Wayne Park to get back on the tail of the Nissan, the Whitfield Nissan GTR. If we take Castrol race cam, riding underneath Tony Longhurst's Benson and Hedges BMW. Fabulous shots from our race cam boys, judging by all the mail that we've received the last few weeks since we debuted this camera at the AMSCAR round at Wanneroo Park Raceway, and then followed up at Eastern Creek. Everyone appreciates that ride underneath the car. And one person who wrote a no, there is not a cameraman underneath.
So John Bow opens up the lead, 4 seconds over his teammate Dick Johnson, and Dick in turn has about a 5-second lead over this battle here. So there it is, car 18, the John Bow Shell Sierra, in fine form at Wanneroo Park this afternoon.
So the gap between John Bow back to the man who's on the move, Jimmy Richards, just under 9 seconds. That's a hell of a lead for John Bow, and here is our man, car number 18. Comes out of the sweeper, and he is doing it right. Not under a lot of pressure, but he's got to drive very quick laps and be very effective indeed. John Bow, car number 18. Pit boards come out as he comes across the strike, and then you can see Johnson in the background. Let's check them out for you on the Shell race score. Bow is your race leader. Dickie Johnson in second spot. Jimmy Richards up to third now in the Winfield Nissan. Fourth is Wayne Park in the Peter Jackson Sierra, and his teammate Glenn Seaton in car number 30 runs in fifth. And we'll be back at Wanneroo in just a moment. Wanneroo Park Raceway, just over half distance in heat number 1 of round 8 of the Shell Australian Touring Car Championship. John Bow continues to lead the race. Dickie Johnson in second spot, and back there in third is of course Jimmy Richards, who's starting to make some inroads now on that second place held by Johnson. But John Bow is certainly the very fast man here today at Wanneroo Park. Well, there's a lot happening on 7 Sport. Keep in mind the 4X Rugby League Test Series, Australia versus Great Britain. The first test from the Sydney Football Stadium next Friday night. So if you're in Sydney or Brisbane, or particularly in Sydney, get out and buy tickets to that one. Hopefully that will be live 7:30 through the evening on both Sydney and Brisbane, and 8:30 through until 11 in Adelaide, Melbourne and Western Australia. Still to come after that, of course, is the Shell Australian Touring Car Championship Grand Final and the Shell Oil Superbikes from Oran Park Raceway. Always a fabulous meeting. Sunday, June 21st. And of course, we're all looking forward to the Barcelona Olympics, July 25th through August 9, live and exclusive to the 7 Network. 3 biggies to catch up on. Dickie Johnson in car number 17 comes through Shell turn, and here he comes for the downhill run now. As we join Dick on the flight deck, what a day so far. 1-2, pal.
Yeah, so far, Mike, so far.
How the tyres feel?
Well, they're getting a little bit greasy, but I'm trying to look after them enough so I've got enough for the next race too.
Well, we're working lap number 17 now of the race of 25. Richards gaining a little ground behind you, so we're not going to hold you up. The car feels well apart from that.
It sure does. Feels really good, actually. It's just a matter of being able to drive it around fairly smooth. So it all happens.
I'll let you get rid of the purple people leader you're passing at the moment.
Thank you.
We're taking the Castrol race cam, riding with Tony Longhurst, or beneath his car, I should say, as he moves up on the tail of Mark Scaife, and Scaife has managed to haul in Wayne Park, second of the PJ Sierras, as you can see, and there's Longhurst making a very short entry to that turn.
I think Tony's conserving himself in this first heat. They may have a tire worry that we're not aware of, but he's not hammering or as aggressive as we've seen him on past events. But certainly, I'd say looking across from our commentary point here, he's been held up in places, but just not able to get the slingshot that he's normally had in past races.
Oh, look at Tony.
Here's a move. He'll never pull this one off. He's
putting the pressure on Scaife. Oh, fabulous shot there underneath the GTR as he gets the power on coming up this very steep hill, reaching about 250 kilometres an hour as they pick up 6th gear over the top. Very demanding on brakes as they dive down into this hard right-hander. And
here comes Tony.
The Nissan GTR brakes particularly well, with the BMW one stage again. Comes right up on his bumper bar as they come out onto the main straight again. These two cars obviously very evenly matched today, but the performance of the little BMW really is remarkable. Half a second faster than they were last year.
GTR of GIO in. They had a bingle on the start line, and that bonnet and front guard was smashed up from the first lap. It's obviously worked itself into a problem.
Now look at
the pit.
Look at this. Scaife having a look down the inside of Park's car. Park's got some loose bodywork, it seems, at the back. They're all starting to lean on each other a bit, getting a bit desperate. There's Longhurst up the inside of Scaife. Scaife's been left high and dry.
Yeah, they boxed him in there nicely, and he can't get by now.
And here comes Alan Jones. He's got the nice line into this corner. He'll go deep under brakes. Scaife gets pushed even wider. Thank you very much.
Yes.
He's lost 2 positions in the length of the straight to the little BMW. It's a remarkable feat.
Tony was very sporting there. He could have dived in under brakes.
Go, Tony.
He's having it another go now. That little wiggle on the approach to where the cars are right now is quite distinct. And we saw Jim Richards pass there before, and obviously Tony said, I'll take advantage there as well. Thank you very much. Here's Alan Jones having a bit of a think. He might lunge down. Now, Scaife, not to be outdone, wants to get a little bit of ground gathered back up, but not finding it so easy.
And he's going to have to go the outside. There's no way. Jones, oh, no. Centrifugal force played there, and the four-wheel drive advantage is snapping off that turn. It played well into the hands of Mark Scaife again. Jones had it all set up, but here he comes again down on the inside. Scaife tries to cover his ground. Jones says, sorry, pal, back you go again. Now he's got to try and get straight across the inside of the track. So Alan Jones is doing a bit of defensive driving.
Just look how well Jonesy hung on to Scaife as they came out of the loop. It's a big, long haul up that hill. The GTR with more power and certainly much more traction. And Jonesy was right with him as they came over the top of the hill. That is really impressive.
2 laps to go as John Bowe comes across the line, and boy, is he serving it up to them here today. Second is still held by Johnson, who may be able to carry on with this and salvage a second spot. Third is Jimmy Richards, followed then by Glenn Seaton. Next is Tony Longhurst. Over Wayne Park, Alan Jones, then Mark Scaife. That dice continues. So if this Nissan had everything set up today for Mark Scaife to try and lock the title up, it just hasn't worked out in heat number 1.
Really is remarkable, the inconsistent performances of these two cars. Richards has had some terrible races leading up to this, and Scaife has been clearly the fastest throughout qualifying and in race trim. Now here we are at Wanneroo with the title in the balance, and Richards well and truly has his teammates measure.
Coming in under Alf Barbagallo in the Castrol Commodore. Alf, of course, very well-known West Australian sportsman. Started out of position number 13 in car number 77. Tried to make a top 10 finish. Beautifully turned out car, and he's doing a good job. 1 lap to go for heat number 1 of round 8 today. And John Bowe across the line acknowledges the signal. Dickie Johnson still hanging on to that second spot. Jimmy Richards trying everything to haul him in inside the distance, and of course Glenn Seaton in car number 30 running there in the 4th spot, followed by Tony Longhurst.
John Bowe, car 18, remarkable performance from the Shell Sierras. 1.3 seconds faster in qualifying, which is a huge chunk of time from last year. Ross Stone now the man in charge of the Shell Sierra team, an expert chassis man, and he's put some work in on these things, and geez, they're using their tyres well too.
They've done a fabulous job, the Shell team, this year.
They have, when you consider that most people have written the Sierra off, Mike.
Yep. And of course the weights and measures and the penalties. There are a lot of people screaming blue murder at the start of the season. Maybe the Nissan did have too much of an edge over everyone else. But the Sierra is back for its final season of competition. Last turn comes up, checkered flag at the ready for heat number 1, round number 8. And it goes to John Bowe in car number 18. And strike up a 1-2 for the Shell Sierra team. Dickie Johnson finishes in second. Huge crowd cheer coming up for that one. And Jimmy Richards coming up for 3rd place. And there's the finish with Glenn Seaton right behind them. Checking them out for you on the Shell race score. Bowie, the winner. Well done. Dickie Johnson, a 1-2 for Shell. Third was Jimmy Richards in the Winfield Nissan GTR. Fourth, Glenn Seaton, the Peter Jackson Sierra. And rounding out the 525, Tony Longhurst. And more fireworks to come shortly with heat number 2. Wanneroo Park Raceway, time to warm up those tyres and get set for heat number 2 of round 8 of the championship. And here's the line of John Bow, pole position. Dickie Johnson starts alongside, a 1-2 for them in the first heat. Jimmy Richards starts out of position 3 in the Winfield Nissan, and Glenn Seaton, the Peter Jackson Sierra from 4. Tony Longhurst and the Benson & Hedges BMW from 5. Wayne Park in the second of the Peter Jackson Sierras from 6. From 7, it's Mark Scaife in the Winfield Nissan. From 8, Alan Jones in the B&H BMW. From 9, it's 11, Larry Perkins in the Castrol Commodore. And rounding out the top 10 in today's field of 16, 8, Colin Bond, the Caltech CXT Sierra. Cars moving into position now for the second of the 25-lap races. And I guess one has to ask the question, can John Bow make a 2 out of 2, Alan Moffat?
Well, based on the way he was running in the first heat, Michael, I think he can, but we've got a praying mantis in the form of Jim Richards on the second row, and we know what his start's likely to be like. If he can mess up that Shell duo, 10 seconds.
He may do it. John Bow, new lap record from the first heat of 59.04. Settle back, time to go racing from Wanneroo Park Raceway.
Red light.
Bow just creeps marginally. Johnson bobbled it at the start badly, ever so badly, and Glenn Seaton shifts ground. Almost tacks onto the back of Dick Johnson's car. That was a shocker from Dick Johnson. But as they make it through turn number 1 and the exit now to Dunlop Corner, you'll find it's John Bow, and right behind him it'll be Jimmy Richards. Next is Dick Johnson, the second of the Nissans, and then Tony Longhurst up very, very closely behind Glenn Seaton. As they go through the sweeper and now start to work the downhill section to the right-hander. And I think you'll find that the Nissan is well and truly on some trailblazing action here today. It's a good start from Jimmy Richards, but that was made even easier by a terrible start on the part of Dick Johnson, and Scaife is already up to 4th and putting pressure on the Queenslander.
Also a great start from Mark Scaife. He leapt off the 4th or 5th row there, pushed his way up through the field. There he is in 4th place behind Johnson. Johnson only just grappling up to 3rd position after Mike said that terrible start. But there's Jim Richards 2nd. So the Nissan's really taking the fight up to the Sierras in heat 2.
Yeah, Scaife's not fooling around either now. He's just shadowing Dick Johnson. I think you're going to find this is going to be a real scrap in this heat. Everybody's monitored what they did with their tires in the first round, and now they know it's go for broke. There's no prizes for coming nowhere in this one, and you can see Scaife being much more aggressive than what we witnessed in the first heat.
Yes, what a difference a break in races makes for Mark Scaife. For a while there over lunch, I knew that Mark had fish. I just thought they'd given Jim the wrong chips. But I think they've got it all stoked up for heat number 2 here this afternoon. And here he comes, slams it down on the inside. That's better as they come out of the turn. And there went Mark Scaife in car number 2.
Fairly easy passing manoeuvre at the bottom of the hill there. So it's Bow, Richards, teammate Scaife moves up to 3rd. Johnson drops back to 4th. And the Peter Jackson car in 5th position.
Well, I don't know that he's been dropping back to 4th, Mark. I think he just got blasted off there. I wonder how the hell that happened after running a cool 2nd in the first heat. But these Winfield boys seem to be able to play around at lunchtime and reprogram their cars. They're certainly not the same 2 GTRs we saw in the first heat.
No. The climb up the hill again, JB in the Shell Sierra, car number 18. Out to about just on the 2nd at this stage over the 2 Winfield Nissan GTRs, and as Alan correctly nominated, the GTRs look a different proposition in heat 2 here this afternoon than they looked in heat 1. There's the gap back to Glenn Seaton. Tony Longhurst right behind Seaton, trying to get in for the draft with a tow up the hill for nothing, and then pull out of the draft if he can get close enough and then catch him under brakes. He won't do it this lap though.
Now that's the hardest part of the circuit for the BMW. That's quite a steep climb up onto the main straight, and with only 2.5 liters under the bonnet, they are hurting on that particular part of the circuit, but still in a reasonable position. Early days in this heat still.
2.23 seconds the gap between John Bow over Jimmy Richards. Mark Scaife sits in behind Richards, and next is Dick Johnson, car number 17. Glenn Seaton, a faster closing Tony Longhurst, then the Bob Forbes GIO entry, Mark Gibbs at the wheel of that one, then Alan Jones, Larry Perkins and Colin Bond.
See them all cutting the corners through the S's. There's an indication that everybody's quite concerned. Wayne Park in the pits. Obvious engine worries with the bonnet open. He can say goodbye to any points here today.
So Mark Scaife moves up behind Jim Richards, cars 1 and 2. And let's see what Richo does with his teammate here. Scaife battling for the championship lead.
Well, I wouldn't exactly describe it as a battle, Mark, but nevertheless, it's always nice to get one in hand, but Jim Richards can stay in front here. He's going to do so as long as he can.
Well, there's the exit to turn number 2. They come up through the S's. Very fast part of the racetrack with Mark Scaife trailing teammate Richards. As Freddie said at the start, Fred Gibson said at the start of the season, no team orders. You'll be able to gauge that as they come running downhill. Little dab of the brakes here to get the car straight, and then hard on the accelerator coming out of the sweeper. There's Seaton still trying to contain young Tony Longhurst, who gets up to the side of him. This will be good if he can stay there when they come down the hill.
He might, no. And Seaton doing the defensive driving. That's quite normal. People would consider that unsporting. It isn't. He's only doing his job. It's his job to nail that corner and keep Longhurst at bay. In the process of doing that, it allowed Tony to get even closer. And we now have a situation where Tony Longhurst is giving Seaton the same treatment he normally reserves for John Bowe.
2.91 seconds the gap from our race leader John Bowe back to Jimmy Richards and Mark Scaife.
Alan Jones shadowing Tony Longhurst, the two little Benson and Hedges cars running like tops. BMW reliability. They, I don't believe, have missed a beat all this season. Tremendous credit to their preparation and the engineering that goes in that team. Try that sometime when you're driving down Swanson Street, well, which we can't do anymore, but shall we say Pitt Street, Mike? What do we want? Parramatta Road?
It's close, isn't it?
And look at the speed of this BMW out of that corner. That is remarkable how quickly it gets up the hill.
You see Seaton guarding every inch of the road.
Seaton seems to be rubbing a tyre there. Smoke coming off the...
I tell you what, when they make their lunge here, it's going to be 2 for 1.
He's basically got it.
Oh, he is. He's rubbing a tyre.
He's headed. That'll be hurting him.
See on our Castrol race cam last time around, he got very, very close to the back of Seaton's car. I don't know whether they touched. Seaton now has bodywork rubbing on his left rear tyre.
Isn't that a fabulous shot? Now he rubs the bodywork there, and when he gets the car straight,
Tony will be breathing these fumes. It's hard enough putting up with the fumes that come out of into your own cockpit, but when you got to put up with somebody else's as well, it can be quite toxic.
He's going to load up the tyre here again, Alan.
Glenn Seaton will also be smelling that rubber, and it'll be unnerving him. There's nothing worse than smelling the rubber prematurely. It's bad enough when it wears out in a straight line, but to be rubbing its way through a mud guard, that's pretty nasty. Under brakes there again. When the car has its brakes put on, the rear body comes down off the shocks and just gets a little bit of relief in a straight line on acceleration, but again, with a good balanced car. Glenn Seaton's car has been handling well all season.
Fabulous stuff. Glenn's throwing a bit of dust up in their faces as well. Actually, Glenn's probably picked the pace up.
Well, moving up behind this battle is Mark Gibbs in the GIO Nissan, Larry Perkins right on his tail, Colin Bond and Paul Morris. So we're getting quite a high-speed train here now.
What's this? There's a little gap opens up there. It won't, because Glenn's going in here, just getting the car steadied on the exit. And then horsepower, of course, comes into play, and there's nothing the Bimmers can do about that because Glenn now drags them up to the top of the hill. Then as they get inside of him on the exit to the hill, he's able to get away. That gap has opened.
Now he's holding it well, and the smoke has disappeared. Perhaps it just took the edge off the outside of that Bridgestone tire that he's running.
to it. Larry Perkins coming up for a huge run on the inside of the Mark Gibbs Nissan GTR. There he is there.
Nice job by Larry.
So Larry's got through as well. Mark kicks up a bit of dust and a bit of dirt on the way through.
Larry in the top 6 again. Every time he started this car this season, he's had a top 6 start, and doing very well for the Commodore Brigade.
Certainly is. He's the standout performer. There's no doubt about that. Perkins up to 8th at the moment. And, of course, Peter Brock and his team electing not to come to Wanneroo. Disappoint a lot of Western Australians. Peter's probably watching the action. The people felt that he let them down in his team this weekend because there are a lot of Rocky fans over here. And there's Perkins. He's here soldiering on with the General's flag all by himself today. The exit to that turn as we pick up on our race leader, John Bow. And Bow's gap about the same. The last couple of laps, still Jimmy Richards. There is the situation on the Shell race score. Bow, your race leader. Jimmy Richards in 2nd. Mark Scaife is 3rd. Dick Johnson 4th. And Glenn Seaton is 5th. There's a lot more to come when we return to Wanneroo. Jones needed. They're able to perpetrate a 1-2 straight through on the inside. Glenn had been rubbing a tyre the last couple of laps, but now they've been able to get through. So whether Tony Longhurst can go on with it from here, only time will tell. But they're all starting to haul in Dick Johnson just a little bit. Johnson's probably 1.6 seconds in front. Seaton didn't like that idea of being snaffled by the 2 BMWs, and he will try and get back that spot if he possibly can. They're looking fairly menacing at this stage of the race, aren't they, Alan?
Unfortunately, just with that battle with Glenn Seaton, they lost a lot of time. You can see now Longhurst with a free rein in front of him, opening up quite a considerable run on the blue car. And I'm not too sure that we got enough laps left for him to be of any real danger to the leaders, but I suspect that he could still get up onto the back bumper car of Dick Johnson and hassle for 4th place. But Glenn Seaton, I think, is a spent force in this race.
And as we take Dunlop race cam, just guess who is sitting in behind Dickie Johnson. Keep in mind we've got our Castrol race cam in the front of Longhurst's car.
Well, he's very close now, and he'll drag him down the straight. Might not quite have the oomph to nail him on this lap, Mike, but he's certainly in a menacing position and will be wanting to work Dick over for sure.
Gap is still just over 2 seconds from our race leader, John Bow, to Jimmy Richards. But Johnson being attacked at this moment by Tony Longhurst. Zippity-doo-dah. Up on the inside with the Dunlop race cam. And away goes Tony. Now, don't tell me he's not the mover in the field. That really did catch Johnson.
Well, this is where we expected to see the strength of the BMW by dint of their sheer consistency in the way they use their tyres. They really come on strong in the 2nd heat, and particularly around here, drivers' opinions vary as to how abrasive this track is. And certainly Johnson would seem to be past the use-by date on his rubber.
And look at Alan Jones. He's also starting to make a lot of ground at the tail of the number 17 car. Dig a little on the sideways. We look out the race cam, the Dunlop race cam. Alan can't do much about that because turbo comes into play and it streaks up the hill.
Well, you've got the lightest car in the field. They've got tremendous tire development with Yokohama. The tires are absolutely tailor-made for these cars. They have the benefit of whatever's going on with the BMW team in Germany, which also runs on Yokohamas. And quite honestly, you have a situation where you have a good chassis. You've got tremendous drivers who've got a real feel for what they're doing. They can nurse their tires just that little bit in the 1st heat and then unleash themselves and virtually go for broke in this final heat, which really does make for a lot of harassment for the people in front of them.
This is what Dick Johnson's seeing out of his rear vision mirror. Alan Jones all over the back of the Shell Sierra. Johnson obviously soldering on.
If you listen to the engine pitch on Johnson's car, he's getting the car straight, then he guns it. Up. And he gets away.
That's where you see 550 horsepower come into play. His tyres might be losing their edge, but in a situation like that, the BMW just cannot match that straight line performance.
Well, with 9 laps to go, the gap between our race leader, John Bower, and Jimmy Richards is about 1.5 seconds. So Richards has carved almost a second out of that in the last 5 laps. They come up on Alf Barbagallo. On Alf sticks to the racing line. That's all right, but it didn't do any favours for John Bower.
No, it just cost John very badly. Jim Richards has gained 2 car lengths in that move. That was just a little bit of unfortunate positioning for John Bower. He came up on a Commodore. Who,
see, and that's what it cost.
Yep.
That's what it cost. That was, and Alf was still there at the end of the straight. So JB's got not much he can do about it if he's out of tyres. We'll have to wait and see as they come down the hill.
Won't want to lock the brakes up now. Slide right off the circuit.
5 laps to go as they cross the start-finish line.
Well, John Bow's shown us in just about every heat that we've telecast this season that he's no dummy under pressure. He can give these guys plenty to think about. They've got to get it just right to get by him. He doesn't fold up like a deck of cards when there's somebody on his back bumper bar.
Interesting equation. Nigel Greenway, our stats man, tells us if Richards wins and Bower comes second, Bower will take the championship today, the points overall. But if Bower comes in behind Richards and Scaife, it means Richards wins today overall. And that doesn't really put Mark Scaife into the equation at all unless Jim's going to open the door up and let Scaife come through. And at this stage, it would appear that Richards and Bower are getting away just a touch from Mark Scaife. Here they come up the hill again.
Well, John Bower certainly been consistent. He's been one of the fastest guys in qualifying throughout the year, and he's also got the highest number of fastest laps in the race. He just broke the lap record here by half a second in the first heat. So that's 4 fastest laps from the year for John Bower.
4 laps to go this time. Jim Richards continues to stalk the man in the Shell Sierra. If they're looking for a guy who can handle pressure, that is certainly John Bower. Tony Longhurst has got that BMW wound up as tight as you could possibly get an engine, and he is charging after them. Then Larry Perkins is already by Dick Johnson. Glenn Seaton's trying to do the same. As they go into the first turn again, there's Dick as we take our Dunlop race cam. Larry getting away from him. While all that's going on back behind Dick, he's got both Glenn Seaton and also the GIO Nissan GTR that's got a bit of coach work sticking up at the front. Mark Gibbs is doing it via the Braille system. Looks like he's picked up something. And they're all closing up behind Johnson. There's not much they can do about it. And Dick is skating around just a little bit. The exit to that turn now, you'll see that Gibbs will try and get up the inside. 3 laps to go.
Whoop, there goes Mark Scaife.
Down at the end of the straight.
The crowd reacting below us here. There it is.
Deary
Mark Scaife, he's just come off at the most unusual spot, just beyond the pit entry lane.
And they're all going to get Scaife. His championship is sitting there. Scaife has gone off at the end near the edge of the sand trap and the entrance to the pits.
Trying to pick up reverse gear with those big racing tyres. He hasn't got a lot of lock that he can wind on, so he's trying to squeeze through. And meanwhile, the battle here, Johnson trying to hold off this gaggle. Glenn Seaton goes up the inside.
There was a touch for sure.
Oh, there he goes.
More than a touch.
They're all over the place. Johnson goes off into the dust.
Johnson trying to catch first gear if he can and get out of there.
So all of a sudden, all hell's broken loose. Scaife, he seems to have vanished. Don't know where he's got
into the pits.
There he is.
He's gone into the pits, but this is going to get away from him. He couldn't believe this. It was all set up for the championship. But at this stage, 2 laps to go. And here's the man that's going to spoil the Nissan birthday. It's John Bower coming down the front straight. There goes Mark Scaife, a lengthy pit stop. He's going to come in and finish last today.
He's been lapped by the whole field, so Scaife is out of the equation. Here's the battle for the lead and the win of the day. John Bower and Jim Richards locked in battle.
Oh, here he comes. Here's the move down the inside.
Now, this really is a remarkable performance from Bower. He's done it a number of rounds before.
Get set, John. Here it comes. The challenge on the inside. Try and get back to the inside. That's what he'll have to do because Jim, with a lap and a quarter to go.
Well, that's Bower's trump card. He has got that straight line speed coming up the hill.
But he can't do anything foolish. He can't float it in and get the tail loose on the car.
Last lap. Here comes Bower. Richards getting sideways, bouncing off the curbs. He's trying everything that he knows to get past Bower here. And if John can withstand the pressure on this last 2.4 kilometres, there's the last lap board.
Yes, we know that. We get back to John Richards goes up the inside. Bang! Touch! Whoa! Crowd is standing and screaming here at Wanneroo Park. Now that's made sure he hasn't folded one of those fenders over a tyre. That's not Jim's way of driving anyway. That was just a racing incident, but he's going to come down the inside of Bow here. And I think Jim maybe have even caught a tyre. Let's wait and see. This is a dramatic penultimate round of the Shell Touring Car Championship. Bow just feathering it through here. Get it straight. Bring on the power. And bring it up the hill because Richards is sitting alongside and Bow's trying to get down the inside.
There it is. That's his trump card. That extra power. He's got Richards covered as they come down to the breaking point for the last time.
Is Jim Richards going to haul it on the inside, or can John Bow keep it straight? He's got to get back to the inside.
Richards gets the power on. He's got a guard alongside. This is a drag to the line. The crowd's going crazy.
Bow wins it. That has ruined the Nissan Challenge at Wanneroo Park because John Bow has won both ends of round 8 of the Shell Australian Touring Car Championship. Second spot will go to Jimmy Richards, and the crowd have gone nuts.
He loved that.
At Wanneroo Park this afternoon.
It was John Bow's best race of the year.
John Bow, the race winner. Fabulous race, fabulous drive. Also to Jimmy Richards, who finishes in second. Tony Longhurst picks up third. His teammate Alan Jones fourth. And for Holden followers, the only man here was Larry Perkins.
Well, some of the most exciting Australian touring car action we've seen in a long time. A fabulous race, and in third place, Tony Longhurst. Well done.
Thank you very much.
All you really needed was a bit more horsepower today.
Yeah, about another 100 horsepower. Perhaps they could pull 40 kilos out of us for Bathurst. It'd be nice.
Yeah, we'll look forward to seeing you at Bathurst. Thanks, Tony. And in second place today, Jim Richards. Well done, Jim. Gee, a real mix-up in the Nissan field there. Mark Scope's going to have quite a struggle on his hands at Oran Park.
Well, no, I think Mark's pretty well set. He got some points today, so I think he's looking good.
It was a good race from you. Did you think you could catch John Bow in that last heat?
Well, I thought I may be able to, but just have a little bit more squirt down the straight. So what we need is probably 100 kilos taken out of us as well.
Everyone wants to change the regulations. In first place, John Bow. Well done, John. You're one guy who wouldn't be wanting to change the regulations. Another fabulous result for the Shell Sierra team.
Thanks, Mark. It was a great day for all our guys. The Shell team have done a tremendous job this year, and Dunlop have done a great job with the tyres, and it's a pleasure to race with a gentleman such as Jim.
Well, there you are, the ultimate statesman to make the presentation. John, well done. Tom Smith from the Shell Oil Company.
Shell, John, a magnificent driver, I can honestly say that.
Thank you very much, Tom.
Now, that's what I call a motor race. A fabulous win today to John Bow. Can he go on and win the grand final at Oran Park?
Well, the pressure will be on him, and certainly the Nissans now have got to decide who's going to win the championship, so Oran Park's going to be a ding-dong.
We thought this championship would be resolved before we actually went to Oran Park. It's not, because the only man who can beat Mark Scaife for the championship is, in fact, Jimmy Richards. Hope you enjoyed our coverage today. We look forward to your coverage when next we go motor racing, Sunday, June 21st at Oran Park. Goodbye till then. Today's motor racing telecast was proudly brought to you by Synovus Vitamins and Shell. Go well, go Shell. This has been another 7 Sport production, the network of the 1992 Barcelona Olympic